Hi everyone, it's Marianne from Yarnwork Studio, and today I am going to use this beautiful hand-dyed braid from June at Three Dog Knits. She makes the most beautiful full braids. This one's 150 grams. And this one's Romney, and it's got these beautiful blue tones, a little bit of green tones, very sort of sea glass like it's called. And I'm going to blend it up on my blending board. I'm going to mix in a couple different things with the intention of trying my hand at a woven scarf for the first time, intentionally. I have tried it with some old hand spun yarn just to prove that I can do it, and I can show you that. So this is what the end result is going to look like, except not these colors, and this one is actually pretty rope-like. Looks kind of weird in the lighting, but this is like a soft oranges and pinks. I'm going to mix up a custom blend that I plan to turn into my first real intentionally made scarf. Let's put it that way. That one was just old yarn, so it doesn't count. Not that I need to justify what counts or not. Okay, so I'm gonna pull the label off so we can open up this braid. I got this braid a couple months ago, and the colors are beautiful, and I just wanted something sort of nice and easy to start with so that I can play on my blending board, because that's what I'm feeling like doing. So I feel like I'm over talking, so I'm going to pull the braid apart. Here we go. Love, 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 love the colors. Big time. Okay, and then what I pulled out to kind of go with it was this Tussah Silk to give it a little bit of sheen here and there. I love Tussah Silk. It's my favorite. This one's from Chaotic Fibres. She's based in British Columbia, Canada. And then also this Tussah Silk that's like a deep teal color. Let me see if I can focus this in a little bit. It's deep teal color. It kind of reminds me of the darker areas of this general section of the braid. So this one's hand dyed. These ones are dyed up Tussah Silk. This is Romney. I also have my little pack of Angelina, which I also get from Chaotic Fibres. And I'm not sure. I'm just going to kind of go with it. What kind of vibes I want to put in, whether I'm going to do some gold or I could do some silver, although I'm not sure I want it to come off that cool. This white has like a holographic sort of purple shine to it. I also have some soft blues here. This is more like a matte. Let's see if I can get it to focus. This is more like a matte type of, I don't know if this is Angelina or if it's Firestarter, because honestly I don't know the difference, but I'm probably going to mix some of that in. And I also grabbed a little bit of a creamy color just in case I decide I also want that to go with my overall blend to just kind of lighten up some of the areas. But I have no plan, I have no agenda here. I just really, really, really feel like blending, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use my blending board. I don't feel like carding this up. I feel like making it a pretty nice worsted spun type of thing. Anyways, I'm just kind of opening this up. I don't really need to, because for the blending board, I can kind of play with it in chunks. There's a lot of different things that I try on the blending board. Sometimes I try to break up sections and then do it by like color sections. For this, I think I'm just going to break off chunks and kind of see how it blends up. So let's just get started. And the nice thing is I don't have to make every single thing the same. I can make it however I want. And I'm sure it will be beautiful because the color combinations are just beautiful. All right, so here's my blending board. Again, if you haven't been in one of my blending videos or on my lives or something like that, I bought this carding cloth, which is this cloth with these teeth. Let's see if I can get a good angle. See if I can focus on it. These teeth, this one's a 90 TPI, so that means there's 90 teeth in a 1-inch square. So it's kind of fine, but not too fine. I got this cloth from Golden Fleece Carters on Etsy. There's also some distributors of Golden Fleece Carters in Canada. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But I just bought this and then I just stapled it onto this board that I had. And it came with a brush. There's their logo. I wish this thing would autofocus better. Maybe I don't have it on the right setting. There's their logo. And it came with 2 brushes and 2 dowels to help pull roll eggs off the board. All right, but without further ado, I'm just going to rip some of this Romney braid apart and just go for it. So some people will, like everyone will do blending boards different. Oh, maybe I should at least focus it on the board. There we go. Some people like to place fibers kind of all over the place. I really like working in vertical strips. It just gives me some happiness. And then, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it because I have my headphones in, but definitely I know this is a little rocky because my little gooseneck camera holder thing is attached to the table and the table is rocking. But this part is my favorite part at the bottom where it looks like this. Some people are a lot more intentional about what they do at the top and how they very gently guide their fibers in. I'm more of a toss it around and see what happens kind of person. Okay. This Romney is super soft. I'm kind of used to using, I've got a whole bunch of just dyed single color. I guess I'll just show you on my beautiful wall up there if I can get the angle. Oh, and on my junky basement mess. But yeah, I'm used to sort of those solid colors mostly on my blending board, which is Corriedale or Merino. This Romney is super soft and we can see like on this edge area, you can kind of see how wispy it is. All right, so that was one chunk. And I do intend for each chunk to kind of look different from each other because it'll have different colors in it. And that way it's just going to be this sort of random color stories distributed throughout the skein of yarn. And then when I weave it, you're weaving in like a little grid pattern almost. So that will also add sort of a level of variability to it that I think will be really, really fun. But again, because I'm brand new to weaving, I don't even really know necessarily. Oh, focus issues again. Maybe I should turn on the autofocus thing some point. That's me talking to myself. But yeah, I'm not even sure what the impact is of different decisions that I make here. So this is just me sort of making it up as I go and seeing how it goes and learning. I'm a process person. I like to sort of try things out and then try something different and see how it's different. I'm getting a nice solid base layer on here. Typically I like to put about 25 to 40 grams on my board at a time. I have no idea how much I'm putting on, so this is just going to be an experiment. But let me tell you, at the bottom here, usually I clamp this down, but I forgot to do that before I started recording. This bottom part is so fun. I don't know if it's showing through really with all the variations in color. Oh yeah, I think it's showing up really nice. It is giving me a little bit of toothpaste vibe, just in the variation of colors. There's some little stripes here and there. And sometimes when you look at the main part of the board, it's gonna look a lot darker. And that's just because of the cloth underneath has that sort of pinkish salmon color. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix in first a little bit of silk. So I'm gonna grab some of the darker silk first. And again, I'm not gonna put too much, but I'm gonna put sort of a few chunky areas on here. So I don't wanna like, actually I'm gonna experiment. If I do like, Oh, I don't know, it kind of half went. Quite a nice big chunk like that. I love the way it shows up at the bottom. And then maybe over here, just for fun, I'm gonna try a little bit sort of less. Now what you gotta remember when you're blending is that when you spin, things will become a lot more, it's not necessarily muted, but things that look like big chunks in here won't look like that when you spin it up, unless you do like huge color block sections. So like these sections aren't gonna look like random huge chunks. It's actually gonna be little bits at a time that are gonna show up. So I don't want to put too much of that one. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of the lighter silk as well. And maybe what I'll do for some of them, I'll only put one color or the other. But since this is the first one and I just want to see how it looks. And again, this is such a small amount of silk compared to the overall amount of Romney wool I just put on there. So we also got to keep that in mind. But what I love about the silk is you can instantly, oh yeah, you can see it really well in the camera. You can see this really shiny little sort of veins that come in throughout it. And that's just going to give it little bits of shine and interest to reflect light, but not be like super, super translucent or something like that. And now I think it's time for me to decide on my sparkles. And I'm not sure if I'm crazy, but I really feel like gold might be the way to go here with this. Silver, I think, is going to make it too cool. And the white, I think, has a little too much purple. So I think I'm going to go with some gold. And I'll know pretty quickly when I put it on whether or not I like it. So again, Angelina is just actually little bits of recycled plastic usually. So I try not to put huge amounts, although I do think with weaving, it might be better for bigger sort of chunks in a spot rather than evenly spread out. So I'm gonna put, like, this is a pretty big chunk of the sparkle. So we can see that. Oh my goodness, look at that. So pretty. I definitely think as soon as I put the gold in, I think the gold is the right call. I'm just gonna spread it a little bit. And then all I'm going to do is layer a bit more of my Romney on top because I want to kind of sandwich in these middle pieces. And not for any reason other than it'll just stay, you won't lose some just kind of coming off the edges if it's kind of sandwiched in there. But oh, look at these colors float. Don't worry about these guys standing up here. I will brush them in and pack them tight after I've kind of filled it in. So I anticipate I'll probably need to do, I would say probably five or six boards full of fiber. Oh, my board might be packed a little too tight. We'll see. And again, there's multiple ways to, there's a million ways to put it on the board. And then there's also multiple ways to pull it off the board. I'm going to pull it off into a mini bat, which just means I'm going to pull it all off at once. And then I strip the bat like I would a regular bat. But you can also pull off roll eggs depending on how you want to spin it. I'm feeling a bat for this one, especially because I'm going to make a whole bunch of them and I don't want to be fiddling with a ton of roll eggs. So what I typically do is just kind of like help stretch it out a little bit. But oh yeah, I guess before I pull it off, I'm going to make sure we get a nice close up focus shot of this beautiful, beautiful wool. It's so soft, and you can't see the shimmery as much, but it will be in there. And now all I'm gonna do, focus, is I'm gonna lift it off the board like this. And it's often fun because you forget what the bottom looked like once you start building up the top, right? And so you pull it up and you're like, oh my goodness, I forgot. And again, this braid is already considered worsted prep because it's combed top. So this is just also doing worsted prep. You can see my layers kind of in here, and you can see like sandwiched in there is the other side. So here's one side of my first battling. I'm going to call it a battling because it's a little mini. And here's the other side. So this was the first layer I put on. This was the second layer of wool. And then in between, you can see these beautiful shimmery bits. And that's that. I will show you. I'm not good at folding bats. I feel like I want to fold it the other way just because I kind of want it to be showing off the sparkly. But I'm just gonna fold it. Oh, this is like the worst demonstration ever. Maybe I'll put it in half. Then I'll fold it. Kind of do like 2/3 and then fold this third over that third. It's a terrible tutorial. Don't treat it like a tutorial. All right. And there we go. Here is our first little mini bat. So I'm going to go ahead and make all the bats. And then I will probably break it into multiple series, but we'll see. And I will come back and eventually we'll see a finished scarf, whether it's going to be in several parts or one part. That's to be determined. But here we go. Thanks for watching. Okay, I'm just doing a check-in. Hoping I can find a way to splice these together later. Here are the 5 bats that I created out of that 150 gram braid of Romney and a little bit of Tussah Silk and some gold Angelina that's giving it this sparkle. And I'm obsessed. I do think it's coming out a little darker on the camera than it is in real life. It's actually quite soft. A lot of it is kind of robin's egg blue, but this combination is stunning and I can't wait to spin it up. Okay, I have the finished yarn. Oh my goodness, look at the sparkle. And this is in my basement lighting, no natural light. But here's the yarn. It definitely has, you can see this part here, see how it's sort of satiny, shiny? That is the Tussah Silk coming through. And obviously the sparkle is the Angelina. We put some gold Angelina in this, sometimes in stronger bits like here. Let me try to zoom in. Now it's still a tiny bit damp, which is why it's still sitting a little bit like spaghetti. But oh my goodness, the color is gorgeous. It's very bright. I'm considering while I weave it, do I want to weave it with a white warp, which would kind of lighten it and soften it a bit. But I think I want to see how it goes. There is definitely color variation. So when we weave, we should see that come through. But overall, the vibe of it is very sort of unicolor. It's all very sort of this turquoisey color. But oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with how it is shimmering and shining in this light. Like, watch me move it around. I would say it's showing a little more blue in the camera, a little more leaning green, like minty green in real life. But this is the yarn. As soon as it dries, because I'm deciding if I'm going to make this a gift weave that I do really quickly, because I would want to gift it really quickly for someone I'm seeing very soon. So I'm going to, as soon as it's set, I'm going to go ahead and get it onto my loom, which I have, which is borrowed from a friend again, and I've only woven a couple times ever and don't really know what I'm doing, but you know what? I don't care. Now I'm just making spaghetti here. So for the specs, I should tell you, I did a 2-ply. It's nice and bouncy, nice and high twist, hopefully. It was a worsted or semi-worsted spin. I was sort of doing a little bit of a backwards draft, but not long draw by any means. And I ended up getting 230 yards. And it's definitely at a minimum a worsted weight as far as sort of yarn weight goes. I'd say it's around a worsted. I could actually measure it, but I am just holding this with my hand right now. I don't have a tripod out or anything. So there it is, the finished yarn in a very unorganized or disorganized form. But we can see it in all its glory. I wasn't too worried either about thick and thin. It was very challenging for me to spin thicker because I'm so used to spinning singles that are really thin. This is really fun, and it only took me a few hours to make all of this. And it should be at least 150 grams total, and I have no idea how much I need to make a scarf, but I guess I will find out as I go. All right. Okay, here is another update. I have done the weaving, but I think I made a pretty fatal mistake because I'm out of working yarn for my weft. But you can see here, and I don't know if I'm using all the right words, so feel free to correct me. I still have a ton of warp left, which are these strings, but they're all individually cut. And I don't think I have nearly as much scarf as I want to have. So basically, I think that I made my warp, which are, again, the vertical strings, way too long. And I did that on purpose because I wanted a longer scarf. But then as soon as I started putting the rest of my working yarn for the weft, which is the horizontal back and forth, I realized I didn't have very much yarn. And so I definitely have a scarf of some sort, and I think it's beautiful, but it is not enough to my knowledge. So I'm going to kind of finish it off, but like all the rest of the strands back here aren't really usable because they're all individual pieces. So I would have to weave in a whole bunch of loose ends. But look at this beautiful fabric. It's nothing fancy. It's just sort of a standard woven texture, but I'm happy with it. I just wish I had more yarn, and I don't have any more of those braids. So I can't reproduce anything that I think would be even close to this. And I think it'd be very noticeable. So I'm just gonna sort of finish it the way that I would finish it, which is not something I really do much, but I'll figure it out. And this is a great example of the learning curve. So 230 grams is not enough, or sorry, 230 yards of sort of worsted weight yarn is not enough to do a long warp scarf. And I did a warp that's probably, I want to say it's, I'm just trying to look and eyeball. I think I went like 2 feet longer than the last one that I did. So lesson learned. We're figuring out how to weave while we play with handspun, and yeah, I'm very happy with it. This is a fun experiment. And now I know more for next time, which is the whole part of the learning process. Thanks for watching. Okay, I am freehanding this again, but this is the finished scarf, and a couple issues with it, as we just talked about in the learning curve. I ran out of yarn, and like, look how much left over from my warp. That's a lot of waste yarn. That was too much. So if I had made my warp shorter, then I would have had more weft yarn to go kind of across, and I would have ended up with a larger finished object. So here it is. I absolutely, focus, love the fabric that I've made. And like the takeaways for me, I also had some tension issues on the edges. So I think some of my warp strands were a little too tight is the takeaway I'm doing there. But you can see a little bit of buckling every now and then on the one side, but not on the other. So I think it was around the tightness of my warp thread on the end there. But Overall, I think it's too short to be a scarf. Like, it goes around the neck and maybe a little bit past that. Definitely not what I want, which would be like a full wrap around the neck and then back down. But if I start looking just at sort of the fabric itself and how it worked out up versus how I processed it, and see if I have any sort of learnings or takeaways from that, I think it's beautifully spun, and really nice consistent yarn. I am loving the Angelina in it, which is the gold sparkles. And let me try to find a more sparkly area. This is an example of an area that had like a higher concentration of sparkles. And I actually think on a 2-ply, that's actually a nice amount there. And I would probably do more globs, if you will, I guess, of the Angelina on the blending board. Just to have more spots where it like kind of really shimmers in certain areas. But I do like the variation of some of the darker bits mixing with some of the lighter bits. And overall, I do find this is like the way it feels. It always feels thinner than I think it's going to feel. And I wish I had, maybe I'll take a little bit of this and see if I can knit some of it up, because I'd like to compare this to knit. I suspect it's thinner. But yeah, I really like this. There's nothing like screaming out to me other than I do wish there was a little more color variation. Or if I had used the white for a warp, which I talked about before I started, I think the overall color would have been lighter, and I do also think it would have been maybe a little bit more, color pooling in a good way. But overall, I'm really, really happy with this. I still don't really know how to finish edges, so I just tied these in some knots for now because I know this is just going to be pretty much a test piece of fabric for me to play with. I'll still wet finish it and try to learn about finishing. But from a color perspective, I'm happy. And from a project perspective, I'm happy. I just made a mistake that I will make sure I don't make again, or at least think about in a little bit more detail. And this is my little scarf experiment then. Thanks for watching. See you next time.